Bonjour, this is Jasmine. Thank you so much for stopping to smell the roses on Rue Madame. For those of you who are new to the neighborhood, I am a writer, a storyteller, and a community builder. I write about culture, politics, parenthood, and my life here in France. I'm building a community over on Patreon with creative writing, full videos, and bonus content. So thank you for your support, making your pledge, and giving life to this passion project. This video, we're talking about unique names in the Black diaspora. And we have African Americans and Africans discussing whether we want our names to conform with or disrupt white norms. So help me introduce my panel and enjoy. Okay, let's start. Thank you guys again for coming. First, I just like for everybody to introduce themselves and tell me where you're from, where you're calling in from. Can you start, Jerome?
Um, Jerome Hopkins here. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. Moved to Chicago in the 90s and been here ever since. So pretty
Nice.
simple.
And Yannick?
So it's Udenna Okafor. Yannick is actually my middle name, but
Okay.
that's what I go by. And that'll be interesting later on. But I'm from Nigeria. My mom's from Cameroon.
Okay, nice. And George?
Born and raised Chicago, Illinois. Mother from the East Chicago, Indiana. Father is from Nigeria, specifically Awe, Imo State.
Okay, and Ngazi?
Hi, I'm Ngozi. I am from Nigeria. Family lives in Stone Mountain, Georgia. I was born and raised in the Atlanta area. Both of my parents are Nigerian Igbo descent, and happy to be here.
Nice. And lastly, Ada, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. My name is Ada or Sandra. I'm from Nigeria. I'm here in Detroit, Michigan, and both my parents are from Nigeria. They're Igbo from Abia State. But,
cool.
Yeah.
And I'm Jasmine, everybody. I am from Detroit, Michigan, originally moved to Chicago, and now I'm living in France. And I decided to do this conference call to really talk about our culture and in the diaspora in general. So I'm really interested to seeing everybody's point of view and how their names specifically kind of like, I don't know, shape their lives. So the first question I wanted to ask you guys was, what's the meaning behind your name, if you know it, and the signification? Can you start, Jerome?
Yeah, so did you say significance? I don't know if there's any significance about it. But in Latin and Greek, I think Jerome means sacred name from Hieronymus or Hieronymus. And my dad named me that. My mom named me my middle name. And that's pretty much it. I was curious about it when I was a kid, so I did find that out.
Okay. And do you come across a lot of other Jeromes, or do you find your name pretty unique?
You know, I think it's kind of old. I've only met a few in my lifetime, like here and there. So it seems to be a African American name that's somewhat common in the African American community. But I have met, I think, one or two Jewish guys were named Jerome or something like that. And what was funny is people would always try to say, "Oh, would you go by Jerry or Jer?" No, Jerome.
Jerome. Right. Ngazi?
So my name Ngozi is actually short for Ngozi Chukwu. And in the full form, it means a blessing from God. The short form Ngozi just means blessing. And yeah, I was named after one of my aunts. So my family, like most of us are named, well, we're all named after another family member. So it's kind of nice to be able to trace our family lineage through, like, you're named after your aunt or your grandfather or whomever. So I'm named after one of my mother's aunts.
Is your name popular?
Yes, it's very common in the Igbo language. Yeah, I see it everywhere, and it's nice to know that it is more popularized since Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie came out with, well, she's been writing for years, but I think that has made my name more common to people who are not from Nigeria or different parts of Africa. Because actually, interestingly, in Ngozi, I've actually found and met people from other countries who answer my name as well. They pronounce it a little differently, and it has similar meanings in those different countries.
And it's unisex, if I'm not mistaken.
It is, correct.
Okay, cool.
It is.
And I have some newcomers here. If you can introduce yourself and tell me where you're from. I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry. Oluyemi?
Yeah.
Oh, Yemi. Hi.
Hey. So my name is Yemi. Also Oluyemi Olumolade. I am Canadian, but my, I guess, roots stem from Nigeria. My parents are Yoruba.
Okay. Nice. I have a lot of Nigerians here. That's great. And someone else who hasn't introduced himself, Adama, you weren't here.
Yeah, I apologize. Earlier on, I was on
okay.
that. You guys were saying. Yeah, my name is Adama. The name is actually fairly West African. I was going to say it comes from Mali. I know in Nigeria, there's some people that are named Adama as well. It's unisex. Guys and girls both are called it. I was actually named after my grandpa. But I do have a grandma whose name is Adama as well.
Oh, wow. It's funny because I'm here in France and I see a lot of Adamas. It's really common, but in the United States, I don't think it's as popular.
No, actually, I don't think I've met another Adama in the US, but there's a lot of people in France, especially from Malian community named Adama.
Yeah. And someone else hasn't introduced themselves.
That's me.
Go ahead.
Hi guys, so I think on the monitor it might say Fifi is my nickname, or Fefe, but my actual birth name is first, like the number 1. My family's from Rwanda, so how I got the name, my grandfather actually gave me the name, but I'm the first baby born in the family. I was born on January 1st at 1 o'clock in the morning on the first day. I'm the first month, the first. Wow. That's how I got the name first. It's not a typical African Rwandan name, but my grandfather thought of it because, you know, this is like the first baby of our family. So my name is First. Yeah.
Cool. And George, the meaning behind George isn't your first name, is it?
Okay. Yeah. So of course George is not really it's really common. When I was first born, they named me after my father, whose also name is George. And but when it comes to my African people, they usually refer to me as Uche. Full middle name is Uche Chukwu, which means God's mind, God's thought, or God's intention. And then my last name is Duo, which means the ruler.
Nice. And your name, I'm just gonna call you Yannick. The meaning behind it, and
yeah.
Sure. So, did you say Yemi or Yannick?
Yannick, I'm sorry.
Okay. So Yannick first means Little John, funny enough. And it's some old French translation where Jan was John and Ik is little or small. So Yannick came from that. It's just a name that's been around in my mom's side of the family. She's from Cameroon. So there's been cousins who've had that name, I think a couple of extended uncles, but that just kind of happened to be my name when I grew up, or when I was born, sorry. And funny enough, it was actually my first name at birth. but my dad wasn't having it. My dad's Nigerian, I'm Nigerian. And he made sure that before I reached primary school, he changed my first name to an Igbo name, which is Udenna. And what Udenna means is recognize the father. So he wanted to name me Junior, but Junior was so common. He was like, no, I'm going to name you. So he ended up calling me Udenna. And somehow between being born and being in primary school, my name got switched. So Yannick stopped being my first name and became Udenna.
Okay. And Yemi?
Yeah.
The meaning behind your name?
Yeah, so for me, so I was named after my grandmothers, both of them. So Oluyemi and Oluwafumilola is my paternal grandmother's name. And then Eniola is my maternal grandmother's name. And so I have two middle names and then my first name, Oluyemi. Oluyemi, from what my mom, is funny because I had a long conversation with her about this recently, but Oluyemi just means a gift from God, or like, this is a blessing. And then Eniola means leader above all leaders. And then Oluwafumilola, I have to get back, because I think that also is a blessing, but I want to circle back and confirm with my mom. And then our last name, Olumolade. So in Nigerian culture, there are a lot of like, I want to say prefixes to names, but there are like beginnings of names and they have a certain meaning. And so Olu means God, which is why I have Oluyemi, Oluwafumilola, and Olumolade. And so Olumolade means God protects this house, or God protects this family.
Wow.
So it's fitting as a name.
A lot of layers. So,
yeah.
Ada? Sorry.
Yeah, hi.
Just forgive me for everybody.
Yeah, my name is actually, what's written here, Ada, is part of a nickname. So that stems from being the firstborn daughter in Igbo culture. A lot of times, or generally all the time, the first daughter is referred to as Ada. It just means firstborn girl. And also, there typically you'll see names like Adeze, Adobe, Aduku. Those type of nicknames or names all refer to the importance of that firstborn daughter. So in most Igbo tribes or Igbo areas, the firstborn daughter has a lot of privilege, a lot of rights. So Adeze means princess, firstborn daughter of a king, and they generally rule what goes on in their father's household. So that's been a nickname of mine for as long as I can remember. When I was born, my Igbo name given to me was due to the circumstances of my birth, which is typical with most Nigerian and African families. Whatever is going on in that particular point in time, that's generally how your name is formed. So my given Igbo name is Ogechi, which means God's time. I was supposed to be born on August 5th, and I came out August 27th. And I was induced. So I did not want to come out willingly, but I came out in his time, I guess. So.
Wow. I think it's so interesting how everyone has a story behind their names. I mean, growing up, was this story given to you, or did you like have this story only until you were an adult? Or is this just like common in your household to talk about this, or is it just common knowledge? George?
Now it's I think I was told the history of my last name when I was 7, because I kept being asked, growing up, like, why you have a different last name? You know, why it's not Johnson or anything like that? So I asked my father, and you know, he told me just that, you know, pure history of how, you know, our last name became what it is. You know, of course, many of my ancestors, you know, were former chiefs, you know, rulers, and you know, that's how we got the name, you know, the ruler, or we rule. So.
Okay, nice. The next question I want to ask the group is, did you always like your name? And since most of you, I'm assuming, grew up, or most of your life grew up in either Canada or the United States, how was it having your name? And for Jerome, did you also have any dislike with the, I don't know, the stigmas around having a African American or ethnic name? You can start, Jerome. You're on mute. Let me take you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like my name. I've always have, and I guess because it was a little bit different when I was in, you know, college. No one else was named Jerome. There's lots of Davids and Kens and Bob, John, whatever. But right. Jerome, like, different. So I like that. So, but you know, it was different enough to where, you know, as I got out of college and entered the working world, there weren't that many Jeromes, and there is kind of a, I don't know if stigma is the right word, but there is kind of a attachment to an American name. So I was kind of curious as to how people saw that on my resume. If they had two piles, okay, this is the African American pile, this is the other pile, and we'll you know, look at them, but we know what's going on with this pile. I always wondered if that was kind of an issue, but and maybe it was in some instances. In some instances, it wasn't. But it was kind of in the back of my mind a factor, you know, as I went forward in my life. So
right,
yeah,
right. Adama, how was it growing up named?
I think he's on mute.
You're on mute, Adama.
Okay. You guys hear me now?
Yes.
So I've been called anywhere from Adam A to people just have their different way of pronouncing it. And actually, my name's not really Adama. In Mali, we say Adama, but people have a time saying that. So I got to the point that, like, when people ask me what my name is, I just say Adama. That's what I grew up saying to people, kind of thing. Did I always like my name? Yeah, I always thought it was unique, actually. Even though my name was Adama, people only knew me as Adama in the US. Back home, nobody called me Adama, they called me Papu, which is because I was named after my grandpa. So like, it's similar, it's like a playful way of saying Papa. It's like a nickname. So that's where Papu came from. So people back home know me as Papu. In the US, they knew me as Adama. Yeah, or Adame for that fact.
Okay. Ada?
Quick question. Not quick question. I want to add one more thing to what he just said about when he got into the job market. I remember I didn't do that with my first name, but when I started interviewing with companies at one point, I shortened my last name just to see what kind of reaction it would get to confuse people a little bit. So instead of saying CD Bay, I just put Sid, because people won't really know where that comes from. Like, okay, that could be, like, just to play with it. And believe it or not, I can't say for a fact, there's no data behind it, but I felt like I had a better response. Actually, I did it. Adam Sid is what I did.
Adam Sid.
Adam Sid.
Wow.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Wow. Ada?
Yeah, so growing up, I initially didn't like my name, mainly because of how much I was teased. I went to a predominantly white primary school or grade school. And, you know, just regular ordinary teasing with my English name, I knew I didn't like. But I especially didn't like it with when I told people what my given Igbo name was. So in that, I importance of my name and did whatever I could to protect it. So more times than not, I always never told my name, my middle name. just because I didn't want to deal with the ridicule that might come with telling it and trying to teach somebody how to say the name and say it properly. So that's my stance, I guess.
Okay. Yemi?
Yeah, I would say growing up, I did not like my name, especially having two middle names and one that was exceptionally long. Yeah, and I think that there's like some component, there's definitely a component of assimilation and centering whiteness in there. And then you get older and you start to like learn the language of the world, and start to learn the rules of the world that don't necessarily align with yours. And so now I've grown to really appreciate my name and appreciate the meaning behind it. And especially now as I'm in school as a student, there's this, where I'm a medical student. And so we tend to be at the bottom of the totem pole. And one of the ways in which they continue to perpetuate that is they don't talk to us by our names, right? We are medical student, and we are medical student even when they are addressing us. And because for me, right, there is a meaning behind my name, there is a reason why I was given the name that I was given. It's really important for me to be like addressed by my name and not by medical student, because that is also just like a part of my identity, but it is not my whole identity.
Right.
So yeah, so now I have an appreciation for my name. And then also I used to be bothered by the Oluyemi and always saying Oluyemi, but as you can see now, that is something that I've grown to embrace and appreciate.
Nice. Fefe?
Well, with me, I didn't have any issues with my name until I came to the US. I came here when I was 8 years old. And so coming here and having teachers kind of pause when they get to you and you're like, yes, my first name is First. That's my real name. And then having to explain to them why you're called, First, it was like, it got tiring. And so I didn't like it as much. And my parents would always tell me, like, they didn't talk about it as much until I got to the US, because at home back in the village, everybody knows First. She's the first kid. She's the firstborn in this family. That's just who she is. And you come to the US and they're like, well, that's kind of weird. Why are you called First? And it's like, well, it has a reason. There's a specific reason why I'm called First. But when I got older, I really appreciated my name because I
think we lost her. Can you hear her?
This is why my name is First, as opposed to when I was younger, I hated it. I had all the jokes. Who's on first, second, third, military, third. Like, I literally heard everything in the book. So I got to a point where I was like, well, I'll just start telling my people my nickname's Fefe because, okay, that's a nickname, and then people just thought that was my real name. And I'm like, no, there's a reason why my name is First. Like, I'm not lying to people. Even on applications, I'll just get Ms. and then my last name is Mutimura. They'll just put my last name. You'll think it's like an error. Like, is this person like stupid? Like, why would you just put First as a first name,
Right.
I mean, I've had issues with it, but I've grown to love it, honestly.
Oh, good.
Good for you.
Yannick?
Yeah, it's similar for me. I came to the States, 11 years ago now. So prior, yes, I had two problems prior to coming. The first one was having to deal with the whole switch up of my first to be my middle name. I guess it didn't really matter then because I think I was used to introducing myself as unique, and that wasn't a problem for me. When I came here, having to hold all your international documents, which really has your first, middle, and last name spelled out, and then enrollments in college and all those other things where everything's so official, I had to get used to my first name being First. So introducing myself was kind of awkward because the pronunciation of my first name, Udena, is not something that most white people are used to. And those are all the people I interacted with, just, enrolling in school. So it was difficult often trying to introduce myself like that. I had to break it out into syllables or, just give them a way to pronounce it. So I think So most of my friends, I still introduce myself as Unique just because I think I prefer it as a name overall. That's what I was used to as a child. And I've struggled with that sometimes, you know, just going back and forth between the two of them. But I guess growing up now, I tend to stress and emphasize that my name is Udena, and that's why
Right.
that's why I gave you that in the beginning. But and at work too, I think I've come to a compromise at work, and I know I don't want them butchering it all the time, and I don't want a long hangover, you know, on trying to pronounce it. So I just go by UD at the office, and it seems to work for the most part. But there was one funny incident though. I showed up for an internship in Indiana, like what, 5 years ago. And when I showed up, they were all surprised. They were expecting a little girl because the end of my first name has an NNA, which is, you know, most English names. NNA is kind of like a female modifier on the name. So that was one interesting experience. But as far as somebody says I'm a job hunting, yeah, I think definitely it does play a role in, like, you know, bias and, you know, trying to get ahead.
Right.
The way I look at that though is I tend to see the positive out of that. If there's any to be seen, I'm like, yeah, if someone's going to judge you off of your name, you probably don't want to be there. So
Yes, that's true. I mean, I guess that's a positive.
Yeah, so it's like, at least I know where you all stand about this. And if someone's willing to overlook that, then you know that, you know, you're dealing with people who think higher. So that's how I look at it. But yeah, overall, I would say 50-50 in terms of love-hate. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it. But
Yeah.
Okay. And George, I don't think we talked to you about it.
Yeah, about my name. Now with George, I still find it very bland to this day. You know, each and every time even when I go out, I even make jokes about my name, like, "Hey, it gets me jobs." You know,
Right.
white people think I'm safe enough, so. You know, and especially, you know, in the times where I'm just like really turned up, it's like, "Hey, my name is George," you know, just I'm kind of 50 with my name because, you know, hey, it helps me get jobs much better. But at the same time, I feel like it's bland. So I'm much more happier when I'm around, you know, people of Africa, you know, and they just call me Uche. You know, I feel like, okay, that's more like it. So, you know, 50-50 on George, but everything else I'm happy with.
That's good. And speaking of that, you were talking about you having a bland name. I was interested in knowing your point of view on naming your children Eurocentric names or neutral names to avoid all of this pronunciation conflict, resume conflict, etc. Or is it better to disrupt white norms and disrupt the assimilation and the often trying to, I don't know, lessen or reduce our Black culture, our Black, I don't know, our heritage for the sake of assimilation? What do you think? What's better?
I would personally, for me, I would call my first son George, only just to keep the tradition of being, you know, the firstborn, being called George. You know, my father was George, I'm George, so I might as well keep that. You know, it's, you know, as we know, we're still kind of facing a whole lot of racial tension here, and it's much harder for, you know, us Black folks to get, you know, good opportunities, good jobs. And as much as I want to give African names, you know, first, middle, and last, I know that it's not going to better their chances, you know, in the workforce. As much as I want to, you know, kind of fight that, you know, I don't want my kids to have to fight that battle, you know. The lies try to lessen that.
Right. Ngazi?
On mute.
I don't know if she is frozen.
Dropped off.
Let's go to Yemi.
Yeah, so again, for me, so I feel like I don't come across many first generation folks who have like pure, like first name, middle name, that are traditional. But for me, I suppose now at this point in my life, I am no longer interested in like allowing whiteness to determine anything about my life or like my future lineage. And I don't say that to disparage anybody who has done that, because I think it makes sense, right? We are in America, and so it makes sense to like try to figure out how to compromise like traditional versus new or like Western beliefs. And I think that for me, names is something that I am less willing to be flexible with. And so I was thinking about this yesterday, like for my children, I want my children to have traditionally Yoruba names. So probably do the same thing that was done for me and name them after my parents or like other people within the family.
Oh, good. Because we see a lot of protests in the street, a lot of resistance, but I think a lot of the conversation is missing as far as the abstract or the symbolic resistance that we tend to forget. As far as police brutality, that's a physical, tangible change we want, but also assimilating and kind of bending over, like you said, to please our hirer or our employee, or to please the white collective. What do you think, Adama?
Oh, he's on mute.
You're on mute. Oh, okay.
Well, with my sister, she found an interesting balance. So in my culture, the dad names the, especially the firstborn, usually. And she has been in the U.S. for a very long time as well. She had her first child not too long ago. And the child was actually named after our father, whose name is Tumani, but he has the junior added to the name. So usually in Mali, people aren't really called by their names, on their government names. They all have nicknames, and the child's nickname. So that's an easy enough name. It's in French, but it can translate to English. Prince. So it's a French, well, Prince in French, but it can easily be translated to English to be Prince. And being that his first name is Tumani, she was always saying that she can introduce himself as DJ or Prince, and go by that, and still have the I guess the name, the cultural name to him as well. Going on to the second part of your question, can you ask that question one more time? I'm sorry.
What was it? Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
That was about children, wasn't it?
Right, your children. Name your children. As a form of resistance, do you think it's better to stick with your culture, stick with your heritage, and name your kid?
Matters, especially where we are. People become their names. I truly believe that.
Head over to patreon.com for the rest of this video. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you over there.